So it's my pleasure today to take a very big topic and distill it into a few talking points. I hope to build your perspective and appreciation for volcanoes, which are certainly among the more interesting displays of nature. Alice Munro is a Canadian writer, and among her many great quips or notes of wisdom, she says, "The constant happiness is curiosity." And we all know that curiosity begins early in life. Kids are full of curiosity. That's what drives their learning of the world. And you could say the same for scientists like me as well. And these are two drawings that come from kids with whom I have some association. The one on the left by a 6-year-old here in Hawaii, and the other by a 3rd grader in Chile. And both show volcanoes with which these kids grew up. They're not only, I think, fine works of art, but they also embed some key scientific observations that are really important in a broader sense. So we can take a look at the work of the 6-year-old, and he witnessed an eruption of volcanoes throwing out globs of red molten lava, very fluid, that would pour across the landscape and shoot like a geyser out of the earth. So it turns out that the French have a great term, an expression for this type of volcano, les volcans rouges. Red volcanoes is what they call them in reference to the lava. In contrast, the Chilean 3rd grader depicts a very different type of volcano, one that explodes violently with electrical storms and puts out great clouds of rocky powder that fall as gray ash on the slopes of volcanoes. So naturally, the French call this les volcans gris, gray volcanoes, red and gray volcanoes, perceived by these kids as they've observed, eyes wide open, the world around them. And these terms are an applicable framework for the rest of my presentation here about volcanoes. It's amazing what curiosity has done for us scientifically. We've learned so much about the world and the universe. It's awesome. And one of the good things about being alive now is to sit back and appreciate just how our vision has been expanded through imagination and scientific knowledge. We know, among other things, that rocky planets like our own are hot inside, very hot. And generally speaking, although there are a few exceptions here and there, the larger the rocky planet, the hotter it is inside. That heat begins very early in the story of our planet's formation and development. Largely, it was inherited from the hot stellar nebula in which the materials making up the Earth came together. And a lot of that heat was imparted through meteorite impacts, big particles of solid rock in space, small planetoids slapping together to build the early Earth intensely. And how intense was that? Well, if you go around the world today, I think cataloged, they're on the order of 125 or 130 meteorite craters that we can find scattered around the Earth's surface. But going back 4 billion years, it's possible, based on inference from lunar studies, that the Earth had 20,000 to 25,000 craters exceeding 12 miles in diameter, and 40 of them greater than 600 miles across. So what a miserable, hostile place it was, the early Earth. And all of this impact tore open what there was of a crust to create oceans of lava and far more active volcanoes than we have today. We call this today, looking back, impact volcanism, impact collisions from space. And that provided a lot of the heat for the first volcanoes in the early Earth. You know, together with gravity, the simple massing together of the Earth to heat it inside through gravitational energy. So early Earth, hostile place. You have to go around and look very carefully at places like the Canadian Shield or Australia to find evidence of this early world. Today, there is some looking at ancient craters, but mostly erosion and the building of new crust have really altered Earth's surface. These volcanoes put out a lot of gas, and the Earth's early atmosphere was essentially volcanic in nature. And those gases are still being erupted today. This table in the upper right of the frame shows the three most abundant gases that are produced by volcanoes. And water vapor is at the top. It's hard to think of volcanoes as being watery, but they are. A lot of this water is recycled near the Earth's surface, but the Earth's deep interior is giving off water as well, together with carbon dioxide and sulfur dioxide. This is a witch's brew. We couldn't breathe it; it'd be poisonous for us. And the early atmosphere was very toxic. It's still present in some modified form on our sister planet, Venus, which is very much like the Earth. Presuming we could even tolerate the high temperatures there, we couldn't breathe that air. But when the impacts slowed down around 3.8 billion years ago, the atmosphere was transformed from a volcanic atmosphere to one that I guess you could say is far more biological in terms of its nature. And the reason that happened is because the Earth is, lucky us, just far enough from the sun and has just enough gravity to have acquired oceans. And that seawater acted as a great sponge beginning between 3.5 and 4 billion years ago for absorbing these toxic volcanic gases. A couple of the key reactions that took place. The seawater absorbed the carbon dioxide. It still continues to do so to produce carbonic acid. And it also absorbed the sulfur dioxide to produce a sulfuric acid. Eventually becoming so saturated, the seawater, with these acids that the oceans began to precipitate out these compounds as solid rocks. The carbonic acid reacted with calcium, which is very common in the oceans, to form calcium carbonate, limestone rocks. And the sulfur dioxide reacted with calcium also and water to produce gypsum, drywall or plaster of Paris. You may be more familiar with gypsum as those materials. And you can go around the Earth's surface today and see great outcrops of limestone. For example, here on the left in Guadalupe Mountains National Park in Texas. And gypsum in the form of sand dunes, as at White Sands, New Mexico. We don't find these rocks on other worlds because the other worlds, too close to the sun or not large enough, lack the oceans that really mitigated the hostile conditions the Earth's atmosphere had early in its history. These are storehouses of Earth's early volcanic atmosphere. And as I say, Lucky us, we wouldn't be here without it, that phenomenon. The Earth is still quite hot, but fortunately we don't experience impact volcanism these days. The amount of heat being released is a staggering 44 trillion terawatts of heat energy. As compare that with the 60-watt release of a light bulb in your house. Every day this is happening. And about half of this is due to gravitational heat release deep inside the Earth. Gravity continues forever, so the Earth will be hot inside as long as it remains a coherent body. But half is also due to the decay of radiogenic elements, uranium, thorium, potassium. These are elements that are constantly, gradually falling apart, and they produce a lot of heat energy now. So what's the operational directive of volcanoes, you might ask? It's to cool planets down. Volcanoes are one of the main valves or means by which a planet cools off. And then that heat, of course, when it escapes, will dissipate gradually into space. About 20% or so, roughly estimated, of the heat coming out of Earth's deep interior is welling up via narrow channels of rising hot plastic rock called mantle plumes. It's like, think of smoke rising from a chimney on a cold winter day straight up into the still air. Well, rock does the same thing too, and it's hard to think of solid rock as moving, but when it gets hot and plastic enough, it's like ice in a glacier. Ice is solid, but ice will move, so hot rock will move as well. And up it wells to the Earth's surface to impinge on the base of the crust and create a concentration of volcanoes that we call a hotspot. And some famous examples of hotspots you may have visited or know about are Iceland and Yellowstone National Park, and my own backyard here on the island of Hawaii, one of the world's biggest hotspots.